on USAID. I shouldn't say we took on USAID and the State Department because the model in the enterprise funds in the beginning was after you sell off the portfolio, half of that proceeds will go back to the Treasury to repay the taxpayers. And my general counsel, who was involved in the formation of most of these enterprise funds, said, Steve, that's a waste. It'll get lost in the rounding if you do that. So we told State and USAID that we should preserve all of that money. Because if Russia really became more democratic, more open, and they were going in the right direction, we could use that money to help support that further. And if it didn't, we would figure out what to do then. Well, the USAID and the State Department were not great fans. They did not like that idea. But the chairman of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee was a Republican by the name of Richard Lugar, and he did. And he put a hold on all that money, which is why as recently as 6 months ago, we had already put $153 million into the U.S. Russia Foundation. We had another escrow account of $153 million. On February 24th, Putin invaded Ukraine. We had 2 board meetings scheduled the following week. One was for the Enterprise Fund, the other was for the foundation. We talked to a guy at USAID that we thought the world of. We made a proposal, we wrote a proposal a week later to USAID to make a grant to the Enterprise Fund in the Ukraine, which was a sister enterprise fund, which we respected and thought well of, to make a grant to them of $100 million. That would help them keep alive the small businesses that were being damaged and injured and might not survive based on what was going on in the Ukraine. And because they were also a foundation, they could make grants to help Ukraine rebuild. Now, we sent that grant request to USAID on March the 6th, roughly. It was August before we finally got to have a meeting with them. And then they made all kinds of requests because they'd never done their homework on what we did. We had to explain first to them what we were all about. And then later when they told us that the Hill thought Russia was toxic and were not about to approve what we were proposing, we were going to give the other $50 million to the foundation. And they just said, yet. So we finally discovered, they came to us in one meeting and said, well, we can't do $53 million to Russia Foundation. We could do $7.5 million. Then the problem was the Hill. The Hill was, because we were always low profile. It made no sense for us to be high profile when we were doing what we were doing. What we did was always in the best interest of the U.S. taxpayers. We set up partnerships between Russian universities, American universities. We allowed Russian universities to partner with American law schools to learn how to teach the case method. They were always doing lectures, which was boring. What we've been doing since this war began was working with the independent media that Moscow had, most of which has left the country and now operates in the Baltics, Georgia, Czech State, and so on. We're providing financial support to them. We're providing financial support. 700,000 to 1 million Russians have left the country since February 24th. We can't afford to support all of them, but we and other NGOs can do this. We're still working with attorneys that are Russian who come to Prague to get educated about how to provide defenses for Russian citizens who are being abused. That's the kind of thing we did. So when USAID asked for us to help with the committees on the Hill that had jurisdiction, we sent our CEO. He's only been with us a year and a half. He's magnificent. He had 25 and 30 congressional staffers to explain what it was we were doing. And when he walked out, they bought it. They all bought it. So about 2 weeks ago, when I was doing the manuscript, I kept, every time I'd write a thing, I'd say, well, someday I'm going to tell you how this thing turns out. 2 weeks ago, the congressional notification that we went to the Hill with for 135 million for the Ukraine and 18 for the foundation was released and approved. Last week on Thursday or Friday, we transferred about $135 million of government-issued treasuries to the Ukraine fund, and the other 18 million went to the USRF. So I think it would be good to stop there, except for one more important thing. Jeff Splitzgerber back there in the last row within this room was the guy who suggested that I write this thing. I told him, no, I'm not famous, I'm not smart, I'm not. He said, well, meet Karen Rimmer. And I did, and she's a gem. This lady has helped 30 people write memoirs. I really encourage you, if you haven't thought about it, I didn't want to do it, but Jeff convinced me and she was a gem to work with, so I took it on. I encourage you to think about doing it, and if you do, talk to Karen. You could not find anything better, and she's within a mile of most of your homes here, so I really encourage you. So with that, I'll stop. Thank you. I really appreciate you being here. I hope you found it worth your while, okay?